So, do you remember anything about any of them?
I know that diffusion, facilitated diffusion are active transport.
Yes, that's good.
Require ATP.
That's good.
It's, what do they call it, passive transport or something?
Passive transport, yes. Yeah, it doesn't require any energy.
Okay.
So,
and it's determined by the concentration gradient.
Yes.
Of one, going like wherever it needs to be.
And it goes from which direction, concentration gradient? Like a low to a high, high to a low.
Oh yeah. I don't remember which one's which. I've got it in my notes. I'll just look real quick. So the fusion goes from higher to lower.
Yeah.
Facilitated.
And you get why. Like just thinking about it makes sense, right? If you've got a bunch of bouncy balls all right here in my hand, and I drop them, they're not going to sit right here and just bounce right here. They're going to spread all across the room, right? So a higher concentration to a lower concentration to kind of just even out.
Okay.
That's kind of what it wants to do. So, yeah, let's talk about diffusion first, and that kind of leads into transport proteins and all that. So there's a few different types of diffusion. There's simple, passive, and active diffusion. So simple diffusion is when the molecule just goes straight through the cell membrane.
Okay.
Like, so here's our membrane. There's a molecule right here. It just goes straight through. It doesn't need a channel.
It doesn't even need a leak channel.
No, it just goes through.
It just goes through.
And that's because it's small and it's non-polar.
Okay.
So requirements, it has to be small and non-polar. Also, I'm trying to think of anything else.
Do I need to know which types of cells are going to have simple diffusion? Anything?
All of your cells in your body can do
So all of
diffusion.
you can. Okay.
Can do, yeah. If the right molecule, for example, what is small? I think it's like CO2, O2, small non-charged molecules can slip on through.
So really, it's just as long as it's small enough and it's non-polar.
Yeah, exactly. So, but if we want something that's a little bit bigger to come through the cell, that could have a charge, we needed some type of protein to allow that to happen. Because a charge, like an ion that has a charge, won't be able to go through the membrane. Okay. So for passive,
so when you say bigger things with a charge, we're talking specifically ions, or not necessarily?
yeah, mostly. When we're talking about the things going inside, like our cells, like causing action potential, which we'll talk about later if you haven't already.
Yeah, we were talking about it right now.
Ions is the main thing, for sure. So, I'm trying to think, passive versus active. That's the right term, right? Sometimes it looks weird, but
facilitated.
Facilitated. We'll talk about that too. But I think passive just means no energy. Active is energy. For some reason it looks weird, but I think that's right.
Look at discussion with diffusion to osmosis.
That's good. So just know that passive means it doesn't require energy. Okay, it's relying solely upon the concentration gradients. That's what's causing it to flow. So for passive, it can be a a big molecule. It can be bigger, and it can be polar. And both of these, I'll write it down, go from high concentration to low concentration. From high to low. And these is carried out through channels, different kind of protein channels.
Okay.
So I'll talk about the different types of diffusion, and then we'll talk specifically about the different protein channels. That sound okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So, yes, passive transport, active transport, simple diffusion. So active is for molecules also that are big. They're polar. But it can transport molecules from low to high and uses energy, requires energy. So Those are kind of the main distinctions. Also, which one of these, hey, talk about the terms like saturated versus non-saturated, or which ones can become saturated. Is that?
Yeah, we talked about this last week a little bit. I just know that saturated means that all the spots are full. I mean, I
Yes.
don't really know which ones can. Okay, simple obviously can, just because
Yes.
it's constant, there's no channels, and
Yeah.
so everything just passes through at will.
So it's unsaturated. I don't know if that's a word, but unsaturable. It's if you create a graph and you're talking about like concentration versus transport or whatever, it can just, the more you have, the more that can,
It's just all
it's gonna go like
in
this.
one spot.
Yeah. For these two, it can let a certain amount through, but eventually it's gonna plateau. It can only let a certain amount through at a time. Both of these.
Okay.
So these ones are saturable. If that's a word, I don't know. Can become saturated.
Yeah.
Okay, so simple, passive, active. Any questions about any of that?